Now, in this session, we're going to talk about creating a sales process. Yes, every great salesperson has a sales process. Now, the best way to equate this to an example that we can all understand is, I want you to pretend for a moment that you're baking cake. Right? You're baking a cake, and that's your cake, you're baking it, and you never follow a recipe. You just kind of throw things together. You kind of ad hoc throw things together. And the cake comes out a certain way, and wow, everybody loves your cake. A week later, you do the same thing, you create the same cake, but it just doesn't taste the same. Third week, you do it again, it just doesn't taste the same. There's no consistency in this cake making process you got going on. Well, the reason is you don't have a real recipe. See, every time you do it, you add something or take away something differently than you did the time before. And because you're doing that, your cake will never be consistent in terms of its outcome. So what we want to do is be consistent. In selling, we need to be consistent. If we don't have a recipe, also known as a sales process, we're not going to be consistent in selling. And much like the cake analogy, you're going to get frustrated. You're going to get frustrated because you're going, well, I sold before, but why am I not selling now? Well, maybe because you don't have a sales process and your recipe keeps changing. So you don't know when you're successful or why you're successful because you keep changing things. So we want is consistency. That's what we're looking for, consistency. So what we're going to do is develop a sales process just for you. Now here's a suggested sales process. I want you to tailor it to your product or your service. This sales process has 7 steps. The first one is the research phase. This is where we research our customer, list out our features, benefits, advantages, talk about who we're going to sell to. Remember that, the target market, the profile, who's going to buy our product. This is the research we do before we meet with the customer. Then the second phase is to actually meet with the customer. Now when we meet with the customer, we're going to ask a lot of questions, and we'll talk about that in another module. We're going to try to find out what they need, what the benefits are, what benefits our products can provide them, but we need to go through the question and answer session first in order to find that out. Once we get a good understanding of what the customer needs or what they might be needing that our product or service offers, we move then to the presentation phase. This is where we either do a one-on-one presentation across the table, maybe it's a formal presentation with a PowerPoint up on the screen, or maybe just off your tab, right? You kind of your computer tablet and just kind of going off there and showing them certain things. That's the presentation. Again, the presentation should be aimed at what they need and what they're requesting. The next phase is a demo. Maybe there you can actually do a demo, show them how the product works, show them how you can make this. In other words, do the how-to in front of them so they'll feel comfortable with the product. Once we've done the demo, the next phase is to actually present some of the different options that we offer as a company. So if you have a product or service, what are some of the options you offer? When we get into the pricing phase, which is the next step, we're going to say we have all these options, and now let me put some prices on these options. So you show them pricing, you show them the different options and the associated pricing. And then the last step with the big dollar sign is that you close the sale. Now, if you establish a sales process and you follow the sales process, is it always going to work? Yes or no? No. But here's what's going to happen. You're going to use this process and you're going to realize that as you're going through the process, certain things don't seem to feel right or turn out right. In other words, you notice that when you're doing the presentation, maybe there's something you need to be doing in the presentation that's different because the customer's just not responding. Or maybe when you're doing the demo, you realize that maybe not doing a how-to, maybe a video would be a better way of doing a demo. What I'm getting to here is that when you establish your sales process, you're going to tweak this thing. You're going to keep tweaking it until it becomes yours. It becomes customized just for you. But you have to have a process. Much like the cake analogy, what you'll have is a recipe. But what you're going to notice is that for step 3 in the recipe, maybe you're adding too much flour and you need to pull back a little bit. Maybe in step 3 of the presentation, you're giving too much information, you need to pull back a little bit. Get the idea? And you're adjusting your recipe all the way through it. What will happen over time is that this will become so second nature. You'll tweak it to the point where it's perfect. It'll become so second nature you can do it almost immediately off the top of your head without thinking about it. And that's when your personality really infuses and combines with the presentation that when you do it, it sounds so natural that people will say, yeah, I believe that person in what they're saying. At this point, you've reached a level of sales mastery that many people don't achieve. Why? Because they don't stick to a process. So again, the key is to develop your process, implement the process, tweak it, adjust it till it becomes yours. Now one more thing. At the bottom you see something called the sales cycle. Now this is always good to kind of know, kind of some information for you just on the side. A sales cycle is how long it takes you from the moment you meet the customer for the first time, really, that's when you really started. When you meet the customer for the first time to when you close the sale, how long did that take? Now, let's say it takes a week. In some cases, it may be a transactional sale, which just happens right there. But let's say you sell some type of software that really requires more than one decision maker. Well, knowing how long the sales cycle takes is very important. Because if you know that your sales cycle takes 2 to 3 weeks, then you can plan for that. And then you can, again, work the process according to that sales cycle. And what is our goal? Our goal is to always shorten the sales cycle because that increases the amount of sales we have. So again, having a sales process will allow you to give you a roadmap to how to sell. Then you measure your sales cycle and say, well, that's kind of long. How could I shorten it? Maybe you start tweaking your presentation in such a way, or your process in such a way, that the cycle becomes shorter and shorter and shorter, to the point where it just can't get any shorter, of course. But you get the idea. Having a sales process is fantastic because it gives you a sequence to follow. Tweak the sequence over time. And over time, as you tweak the sequence, you might find ways to make it more efficient, get better at it faster, and shorten your sales cycle to increase the number of sales you get per week, per month, or per year, whatever the case may be. So in this exercise, what I want you to do is think about your sales process. Now, list out your sales process, draw it out. I've provided a worksheet. And again, a sales process should typically not be longer than 7 steps. If you go more than 7 steps, you better be sure you need those extra steps. 7 steps is about the right length, and it may be shorter. I've seen some with 3, I've seen some with 5, but 7 seems to be the ideal number of steps in a sales process. So go to it right now. Take your time. This is important. This, again, forms part of the foundation. There is the mindset, now there is the strategy, and this is your sales strategy. Go to it.